to make it easier, you need to drink.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Cheers, cheers, cheers.
L'chaim.
אוקטן 95. מקווה שזה לא מצולם. Okay, so our talk today is titled Get Rich or Die Trying. As I mentioned, it was presented in BotConf last year, and we are definitely privileged to present it to you here today for the second time. So thank you, Ezra, for hosting us. And before we begin, does this thing work? No? Okay. I'm just going to use the keypad. So I'm going to present ourselves. My name is Mark. I'm a security researcher, reverse engineer at the Checkpoint's malware research team. And today here with me is Or, which is one of our intelligence analysts. And together we're going to talk about a campaign which we both inquired last year. And without further ado, I'd let Or introduce you to the story.
Thank you very much. Okay, perfect, I'll start. So our story starts with once upon a time. I went through our telemetric data. I wanted to examine interesting spam or phishing campaigns, email campaigns with general topics, delivering malicious attachments. So in this case, I saw something very interesting, an email subject discussing Aramco's RFQ. Aramco is the world's leader oil producer. It's a Saudi government kingdom-owned company, and an RFQ is request for quotation. This is an economic process. This is very unusual. So you can see here, this is the top 10 most common spam malicious campaigns in the world for that period of time. It reached top 10. Usually what we see is just job applications, invoices, stuff like that. And it was very, very interesting. And all of these emails were arriving from genuine Aramco workers' email addresses, from various email addresses. And it made us be a bit suspicious. At the same period of time, there was a lot of tension between Saudi Arabia and Iran regarding the Qatari blockade, the Yemeni conflict, and there were a lot of issues at that time. And Aramco also has a very rich history as a cybersecurity victim in the region. And it gave us a lot of impression that there is something big going on, and that maybe we found something major. And to add some fuel to the fire, there were some speculations about the coming Aramco IPO, which is initial public offering of stocks. And Aramco is considered to be the world's largest company, or maybe second largest after Apple. So this is a very interesting economic event. All of that's like a big party of incidents, and we wanted to dig deeper. So we started speculating what we see here. First thing to come to our mind, that this is an APT campaign against Saudi Arabia. It won't be the first time, and I assure you that it won't be the last time as well, with very obvious suspects, like in the history that they were experiencing Shamoon attacks on Aramco and other incidents. Second option, that this is maybe an industrial espionage before the IPO. Aramco is a private company. Maybe someone with some data about its equity can make a huge fortune by just knowing a little bit before the IPO starts. And third, that this might be a new campaign against the global energy sector. So considering our clients that were addressed with this campaign, we had the hunch that it is focusing energy companies, transportation companies, companies from a very limited or surrounded field. And we went into investigation. We wanted to know actually everything. We had no idea what we're facing, who the attacker is, what are his targets, what's the story with Aramco, which is very unusual, what's the campaign modus operandi, and what kind of instruments, tools, malware, attack vectors used in this campaign, and above all, does that require any immediate intervention? So our approach was that this is maybe something that's about to explode and we must take care of it very immediately. So we went on to investigation.
All right, so at this point, we at the malware research team get the samples for investigation. And actually, before we talk about the samples, I would like you to get acquainted with the APT meter. Is there anyone here who doesn't know what an APT is? Raise your hand. Okay, APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. This is usually an attack group or campaign which is targeted towards a particular individual or entity, usually by very resourceful groups, nation-state actors, and things of that nature. And this APT meter will denote the level of APT-ness, how advanced persistent threat, how much of an advanced persistent threat this campaign is going to be throughout each one of its stages. So let's begin with the first artifact that we've seen, and that is the phishing mails sent on behalf of real Saudi Aramco employees. And these contain two malicious documents, which evidently are just plain downloaders. Those two downloaders contacted two domains, the first of which is called alkhalafgroup.com. And this one is actually a real investment company based in Saudi Arabia. Actually, their site was compromised so as to host malicious executables. And, you know, we're looking at this and we're thinking it makes sense that it could be an APT. We have a Saudi Arabia site compromised. So it aligns with our initial speculation. It could either target Saudi Arabia or the Aramco conglomerate. So as I mentioned, this aligns with our initial speculation. So the second domain is called Direct Link CZ, and this domain, as a matter of fact, is one that was active only for a few months in the last year. And we had to unearth it using the Wayback Machine to show you it here today. And this is how it looked. As a matter of fact, this one was a site that pretended to be a legitimate file hosting service, where you can upload your files and send links to those files to anyone who you wish would download those files later. But as a matter of fact, this site hosted, the payload that it hosted was actually malware, both known and unknown malware, and namely it hosted all the samples that were related to this campaign. Another interesting fact about this site is that it was affiliated with Hack Forums, the infamous fraudster/crimeware forum where malware authors and various dubious entities, you said that. So it is affiliated with that site. And we went to both of these domains and we started acquiring the samples. So the first sample we acquired was actually packed with a custom packer. We unpacked it, and what we got is a binary with some obfuscated strings, as you see right here on the screen. And we look at this and we think it seems like some sort of a keylogger. Or, I'm sorry, it seems like some sort of a logger. I actually gave you a hint about what that is. So we're looking at this, but it's not clear what is being logged, right? And also, it seems like the obfuscation method that is used here is some sort of a substitution cipher, whereby each character is replaced with a different character according to some predefined index. So we dig deeper in the binary, we find this string, which looks like this sort of an index. We cross-reference it in IDA, and what do you know? We get to the decryption routine. We apply this decryption logic using a simple IDA Python script, and we are able to decrypt those strings. And as I mentioned, what we see is a plain keylogger component. But still the question remains, what is the underlying malware? So we dig a little bit deeper and we realize that we're looking at a known malware that is called NetWire. NetWire is in fact a RAT, remote administration tool, which is just a glorified backdoor. This is just you know, a means to control a remote machine, either via a shell or by actually accessing the target desktop. In the case of NetWire, NetWire is actually provided by a legitimate company which names itself Worldwide Labs, who advertise it under the pretense of being a legit IT tool for managing network resources. But if we look back in time, then we can see the first place where it was advertised, which is Hack Forums, which we talked about a few moments ago, where the authors of this piece of software introduced some interesting, legit features like password recovery, which is evidently synonymous to password stealing, which is, well, absolutely legitimate. So moving on, so one more caveat about this remote administration tool. In order to control the RAT which was implanted in the victim's machine, the attacker needed to operate some RAT clients which contacted those machines. An interesting choice he made was to deploy those clients in various virtual private servers which were spread across the world. And once again, remember, we're thinking this is an APT. So it sort of seems to us like whoever is running this campaign is trying to sustain some level of OPSEC, is trying to remain covered. And once again, this aligns with our initial speculation that we are dealing with an APT. So moving on to the second sample in this campaign, once again, we get a custom packer. We unpack it, and this time what we see is a portable executable, which is compiled from originally VB6. And for those of you who do mal, yeah, I see this guy doing this face here. This is like the equivalent of hemorrhoids for malware analysts. And we nonetheless pursue this sample for further analysis. And we realize we're looking at some kind of an info stealer. Only that the stolen info is kind of weird. So, for instance, we get targeted applications like Trillion Messenger. Who have heard of this? Wow, like, it's amazing. Two people, and that's more than I expected. Yeah, that's more than I expected. There's also RASphone targeted here, which I don't know what the hell that is. And also the most widely deployed application nowadays, Yahoo Messenger, is also the target of this tool. And we kind of look at this, yeah, and we kind of look at this and we're thinking, you know, this is kind of weird. I don't know, we need to think about it again. And deeper inspection of this binary reveals that it's a known malware. It's one that's called actually Icestealer, where ISR obviously stands for Insecurity Romania. And here on the screen you can see the builder for this malware, where you can build the actual malware binary component, and also build the backend server, which is hosted as a CNC server. In our case, the attacker hosted his CNC server, or the code he built with this builder, on a compromised website where he hosted all of the victim data. Here on the screen you can see the panel for this tool for this backend CNC. And looking at the code of this server, which we were able to acquire, we see a very plain functionality whereby the stolen credentials are passed in an HTTP URL and are checked against the database on the server. If they are not there, then they get appended. Another artifact we found in the Icestealer binaries is, across all Icestealer binaries, is this version manifest where we have a company name which is simply the worst, and given the high level of sophistication of this sample, I definitely agree with this company naming. And to go back to our evaluation of APT-ness, we look at this and we think something here doesn't add up. It seems to us like this is not the sophistication level that we would expect from an APT threat actor, which drives us to demote this thing to what we refer to as an RPT, which stands for ridiculous persistent threat. And yeah, so we move on to the final sample. And guess what? It's a custom packer once again. We unpack it, and this time we get a .NET binary. Of course, .NET is managed code, so why not decompile it? We decompile it, and we get these strings. Now, we look at the strings, and we immediately identify this as a known malware, which is called Hawkeye Keylogger. Hawkeye Keylogger is actually authored by a non-existent company, to the best of my knowledge, which names itself Hawkeye Softwares, and it features some interesting things like the ability to steal keystrokes, clipboard data, take screenshots. It also has some custom stealers, like stealers for common web browsers, mail clients, and so on. Alongside with, by the way, pretty peculiar stealers for things like Minecraft and Steam. For whatever reason, the attacker needed those. And a more probably important attribute of Hawkeye Keylogger is its CNC protocol. And Hawkeye can deliver data to its CNC via 3 common protocols, so either by SMTP, FTP, or HTTP. In our case, the attacker chose SMTP as his channel, and the way it works is that the Hawkeye implant would gather some data in a buffer. It would then try to issue it to a mailbox using a designated SMTP server. This SMTP server could either be in the attacker's possession or could be a compromised server. We've seen actually both cases in our campaign. And the mail would be sent from the attacker's mailbox to the attacker's mailbox, so as to not leave trace in any external infrastructure. If we look a little bit deeper on the code that constitutes this communication channel, then we can see here a configuration section of Hawkeye Keylogger. And for one, we see that our attacker chose, yes, he chose SMTP as his primary channel. Secondly, we see an interesting section here, which is actually the encrypted, AES encrypted and base64 encoded SMTP credentials. Now, obviously, to use those credentials, they would have to be decrypted. And they are, in fact, you have a decryption routine within the code, which gets the encrypted payload as the first argument and the symmetric AES key as the second argument. And you would have to argue that during runtime, this thing would have to get somehow the AES key. In which case, you're absolutely right, because the keys are right there in the binary, and they are encrypted credentials, which is the most original choice I can think of, the most unoriginal choice I can think of. So, once again, in light of this sort of ridiculousness, we reevaluate the whole level of APT-ness of this thing, and we further demote it to what we refer to as an ALPT, which stands for absolutely ludicrous persistent threat. And we got the credentials, right? And we're thinking, why not use them? So we take these credentials, we enter them in Thunderbird, and what do you know? We're inside the attacker's mailbox. Now, at this point, we're at the heart and soul of this campaign. We are in possession of all the data collected from the victims, which is hosted on the attacker's server. And we decide that we want to skim through this data so as to notify any victims about a possible breach. And while we do so, we realize that we found a few more email addresses belonging to the attacker. Cross-referencing those against some WHOIS queries, we get to a few other dozens of domains belonging to this attacker. Looking at the logs one more time, we see one very interesting victim. And this victim provides us a lot of screenshots. One of these screenshots is the one you see right here. Now, I don't know if you realize what you're looking at, but as a matter of fact, this is a screenshot of a victim looking at logs of other victims, which in essence, ladies and gentlemen, means that our attacker infected his own machines for whatever reason, and along with recording all the victim data, recorded every step of his actions on his own machine. So, as you might realize, this was certainly shocking for us, and as Or will present right now, we found some interesting stuff there.
Thank you, Omar. We started with my speculations about the discovery of regional, something out of this world of cybersecurity incident, and I found myself with this guy. So we start asking questions, what we see here, and I was the one looking at all the multiple screenshots. Many of those are unuseful, but I can find some very interesting information regarding the attacker that really helped us to understand what we're looking at, and especially for me as a threat intelligence analyst, this is a once in a very long period experience in understanding what the other side see, feel, the approach and everything. It was very interesting. So first of all, we can see the different products from all the infected machines and all the unuseful passwords for very weird applications that he harvested, connectivity checks, screenshots and keyloggings. We can see other interesting features. So you can't read this, but this is a tab related to free software called Light 1.4. This is a free software used to harvest email addresses. So everything with an @ in the middle, every email structure, you just harvest them into a TXT file or something like that. And in another tab, he just looks for email addresses from Taiwan. So this guy is now, in this specific moment, looking for Taiwanese email addresses, and he's even putting the effort in reading the Wikipedia article about the economy of Taiwan, because he wants to do a very well done job in his campaign, and this is very interesting. We can see the low quality of phishing. All the emails start with a head saying "Dear Sir/Miss," which is the most unintimate way to start an email, especially malicious email, although some people read those. And the attack is driven via a genuine email address that he compromised, so there is some minimum level of OPSEC that he goes through. He attacks via the genuine email address, and he spoofed the sender's address to an Aramco email address that he know that belongs to a real employee. we can see this is another email address that he used in order to attack from. We can see in this screenshot he puts on the reply to field his own Yahoo address that he uses for multiple malicious purposes. And this implies some low quality of social engineering. If some victims press reply to because they want to understand what's going on, they are actually writing an email to this very weird Yahoo address. By checking all the screenshots, I could see in some of those the quantity of unread emails for every address. So I can see that while he's working, like the number goes like boom from singles to a few dozens. So people actually reply to this address and they accept that. We can also see on the tabs above the multiple email accounts that I can't see the full name, but in some of those I can see a partial name, and I could link that with a whois email address that I saw in the past when I registered all the domains in our investigation. And this is all done from a single workstation, and this is very interesting because actually this single computer hosts everything within this top operation, the intelligence, the harvesting of information from infected machines, and also the malware delivery. So everything is done from this single workstation, implying that this is a one-man show. A one-man show operation. We started by, I believe, like a very gigantic operation, and this is actually seems to be a single person. And above everything, I follow this battery line, and this is very, like, this guy lives on the edge, and even though he's just a single person, I wouldn't undermine him. He lives without the charger for a very stressing period of time. Among all other screenshots, I found this very interesting screenshot. You can see the taskbar uses the Opera, Firefox, Chrome, etc. Browsers and applications, and you see the same tabs, but what is this? So, exactly, so this is a Facebook account, so I was putting some questions. Is this his own Facebook account or someone else's? So I assure you this is his own personal Facebook account. Everything that we saw being written over there is about romance and personal life. It has no malicious application, I think, in the end. So we actually found this guy's Facebook page. He used that on the Chrome while all the malicious activity was done via Firefox. So a little bit of OPSEC from the same computer at the same time, I guess, in order to provide himself some, I don't know, some fun while he works. And I'm proud to introduce you SO. We cannot share his full name. He's coming from Abuja, Nigeria. This is the capital of Nigeria. He's estimated to be around 27 to 28, and his Facebook motto is ironically, get rich or die trying. And another thing with swag. By the way, I went through his Facebook. He is very weird, but nothing, except for a few pictures of him with a computer, nothing implies I'm a hacker. And he really likes money. So I'm pausing our gossip part about SO, and I go back to the campaign. We also went through every keyloggings from his own machine, and were able, with the blood, sweat, and tears, to count every single email address that used for this operation. So we found above 6,000 email addresses in this single campaign from a very specific set of domains, using in a single malware in his entire operation, in the Hawkeye operation. All these email addresses were using over 4,000 distinct corporates and organizations, including some of the largest worldwide. We saw some focus on oil and gas sectors, car manufacturers, and banks and finance. And also, this is from a very limited short of time. I can actually see that every email address is alphabetically. So I saw AA going on, and then Aaron, and then Elvis, or whatever. Everything is by the same order of alphabet, so I guess the real numbers are 10 times, 100 times higher. And we were able to locate about dozens of distinct machines infected with this Hawkeye solely in this period of time. And I went through all the products. I could attribute products to at least 7 recognized companies. So by saying that, I mean that I found information which is sensitive information that I can attribute to a single worker or a single bank account or a single organization. So this is actual damage worth a lot of money to 7 different companies from a very small portion of this operation. So we started with an APT. We shrunk down to something that is like this guy from Nigeria, and actually the damage is very impressive. Going back to our guy, so a lot of work, very impressive, but where the money comes from, which is very interesting. So he used one of the CNC email addresses in order to conduct a classic Nigerian scam, and not for no reason this country received its own malicious activity drill. So I will make the long story short. SO is disguised as a woman named Daniela. He disguised as a real woman coming from an Italian manufacturing company, and he discussed with a guy named Sanil on the bottom about a transaction. We don't know how this activity started, whether he put himself on an going on activity or he just initiated this economic activity, but eventually convinced Sanil to make a purchase of machinery in worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars and to deliver the money to a bank account in China, that in like an anonymous bank which he never heard of, which makes no sense because he's coming from Africa and she's coming from Italy, and so on and so on. And eventually this guy actually provided the money, and you can see highlighted on the bottom how it ends. Sanil is saying where the money is gone. I transferred you the money. Where is the machinery? What's the problem? I am very sad. And he also in another email describes the amount of money that actually shocked me in this single activity, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then SO tries to intimidate him by saying that he's done something wrong and that he'll blacklist him. Maybe this is a common behavior among fraudsters. So this is like a single activity done from a single email account that by, I don't know, by what reason he used this CNC also to conduct a scam, but this is a single activity resulting with a lot of money, especially in his terms. So going back to SO, we wanted to understand a little bit more about the ecosystem, the threat ecosystem is coming from, and I dug into his Facebook page. I went to the different Facebook groups. Some of them were very weird and unrelated to threat activity, but another one actually provided a lot of information. So for those of you who don't know what ywire.com is, have any one of you ever heard of it? Good, because you're not bad people. So ywire.com is a set of groups, WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, and channels, and dark web groups, using lightweight hackers, fraudsters, money mule operators, and all kind of guys that and also ladies that are involved in the thievery of money from credit cards, bank accounts. This is like I think like the base of the under the darknet ecosystem. These guys just take credit cards and they try to buy stuff and transfer money. And in this incident, this group is active on Facebook, which is very weird and unusual. So I tried to enter this group, and I found out that it's even not closed. It's an open group dedicated to money thievery and cyber criminal activity, and people are using their own personal Facebook profiles in order to be active over there. So I provided you 2 examples, there are more over there, about what's going on in these groups. So on the right you can see a guy named Frank. He's operating Money Mule. Money mules, if you don't know what money mules are, these are like guys, basically poor guys that are withdrawing money from bank accounts. So if they get caught, they don't face a lot of damage, and this is usually how you steal money from real credit cards and bank accounts, and he's looking for someone to provide him with credentials. And this is a wonderful match of a guy who has like credentials he stole from someone via cyber criminal activity, and this guy has the money mule in order to make the transaction, and now they can make a lot of money together. On the left, you can see another guy named Clinton. He's offering for sale a computer architecture of an SSH SMTP, a webmail, and an email harvester. So this package, which is not that complicated, is actually very, very similar to what we've seen in our case. So this is like a benchmark. This is the toolbox of the basic Nigerian hacker. And this is all done on Facebook. This group is working, it's active, and actually when I was looking at it, there are several others. It was so clear and out there that it is amazing. And why? Maybe they're just not scared. Maybe it's legitimate, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll steal like 2 more minutes of your time, and I'm going to summarize what we've actually seen in this campaign. So what did we see? So initially, we thought that we are looking at an APT, giving our APT meter the ability to judge. It simply breaks because it is unable to bear this low level of APT-ness. And we finally crowned this thing as NPT, Nigerian Prince Threat. And yeah, and going on to look at this campaign, one of our insights on this is that this is a pretty noisy campaign. There were a lot of emails involved. It was actually one of the top 10 campaigns in our telemetry. Surprisingly enough, it was not detected. So this is one of the domains used by SO. It wasn't detected in the beginning of the campaign. It wasn't detected even much later in the year. And you can check that domain right now in VirusTotal. It's still not detected. Also, we've seen a pretty unsophisticated threat actor here, which, despite his low level of sophistication, was able to reach pretty impressive results. He had pretty nice infrastructure, and he was actually able to cause real damage using practically no skill. This is not a big surprise that we see guys like this. Actually, this guy is not working alone. He's a part of an ecosystem where you have, like, I don't know, dozens or hundreds or even more guys like him, which operate in an ecosystem where you have both fraudsters and malware authors, malware resellers, and so on. And looking at this and the scale of damage that was caused as a result of this campaign, we definitely think that such incidents, although being sort of common, unfortunately, they require more attention from security vendors, and I think more from law enforcement agencies. From what we can share with you, then we definitely reported this guy back at the time to the authorities, both local authorities in Nigeria and international authorities. Unfortunately, this guy is still free, and that is mainly due to the Nigerian authorities being reluctant of handling such incidents. At this point, I would like to thank you for your attention. You're welcome to ask us any question you want. You can do it in Hebrew. We're done with the English. And thank you very much.
יכולים לחזור שוב על שרשרת ההתקפה, איך היא באמת התבצעה, כאילו זה התחיל מפישינג מהם, כמו שהבנתי, ואז הם היו ששמעת דוקימנט, כן? ואז מה, זה הפאוס כזה?
אז לא, אז הדוקימנטס היו בעצם דאונלודרים רגילים, הם פנו לשני דומיינים, שמהם הם הורידו malware, אז היו שם יותר, זאת אומרת, ראינו אוסף של מיילים. בין כל המיילים האלו, במכלול הזה ראינו שלוש מלוורים, אחד מהם היה באמת Remote Administration Tool, השני היה Icestealer, והשלישי היה סוג של Keylogger מנופח כזה. כן.
האם לדעתכם בגלל שזה היה כל כך משהו פשוט, בגלל זה כאילו נשאר כל כך זמן מכאן למדע? כאילו כל איזה דיאגנוסיס?
לא יודע.
שאלה מצוינת. אני יכול לבדוק הרבה מאוד ניחושים. יכול להיות שהעובדה שהוא ישתמש בעצם TP אז פחות סביב את הדומיינים האלה, ואולי יש לו הרבה מאוד מזל, לדעתי. מנקודת מבטו אני לא חושב שזה היה בגלל מודעות גבוהה למה ונדורים יודעים לתפוס ומה לא, נראה לי שפשוט לא פחד. זה משהו שהוא הכיר והוא די בסיסי ועבד לו.
כמה הקוסטום פארטיות עזרו פה להישאר מתחת לרדאר?
אני חושב שמאוד.
זה מוכר הרבה שנים.
אני אגיד מנקודת מבטי, הקבצים האלה היו חלקם מזוהים כי הם קיבלו הרבה מאוד סאבמישנס ל-VT, כי הוא השתמש באותם סמפלים הרבה מאוד פעמים, הוא עבד בצורה מאוד מאוד רועשת. ברוב המקרים גם זה איזשהו ג'נריק, וכנראה שהדברים האלה לא קיבלו מספיק יחס ולא הרחיבו את הרשת. זאת אומרת, זיהינו רשת עם המון דומיינים, חלקם שימשו גם לפישינג, וכאילו אף אחד לא נגע בתשתית הזאת, למרות שהיא הייתה מאוד מאוד ברורה. אז הפקר עזר, כי פשוט אף אחד, זה נראה כזה סתם, לדעתי.
מבחינה טכנית הפקרים לא היו מאוד מתוחכמים, אין ספק שהיו ונדורים שלא ידעו להתמודד איתם. אני לא חושב שזה היה top of the line שיטת אופוסקיישן שאתה תמצא היום בשוק של malware, אבל יחד עם זאת זה עבד לו, גם אם חלק מהסמפלים אגב זוהו, זה לא הפריע לו, מסתבר, להרוויח כסף. כן.
יש מתח בין להפיק מודיעין ובין לעשות את הסורס כזה. רציתם להגיד לסגור את הקבוצת פייסבוק שעקבתם אחריהם?
כן, כשאנחנו היינו בבוטקונף אז פגשנו בחור מה-e-crime team של פייסבוק, שזה ממש צוות יהודי מתעסק בלנטר כל מיני פעילויות כאלו בתוך פייסבוק. כן, זה בדיוק מה שקרה פה. פנינו אליו, אני באמת לא יודע אם, לא ראיתי שהקבוצה נסגרה, אבל אני יודע שפייסבוק יודעים על זה. אז כן, אין ספק שכאילו הבאנו את זה לידיעת פייסבוק לפחות. מעבר אתה יודע, שאר הדברים שהיו בקמפיין הזה, שזה שידענו מי הבן אדם שהפעיל את כל הקמפיין, שפנינו לרשויות וכל זה, לצערי, בגלל שזה ניגריה. כן. שאלות? תודה רבה.